What's up, guys? Another day, another dollar. Before y'all ask, the tattoo is only 1/6 complete. I still have to do all up here, my shoulder and my forearm, so it's kind of just like an incomplete thing right now. So, but it means a lot to me, so you know. So today's video topic is my experience as an architecture major in college. So people have been wanting me to talk about this for a while. Architecture at my school is 5 years long. It's not a 4-year major. And I'm gonna talk about the goods, the bads, what I've learned, what they didn't tell me, what I feel like I would have changed if I had known about. So, if you want money, right? If you fuck with, do you fuck with money? Like, you like buying shit? Do you like nice things? If you like nice things, like money, if you want to live in a big fancy house, do not choose architecture as a major. The money is not really there. It can be there much down the line in your career if you start your own firm, but I would definitely say that it's more of a passion job. I would say that if you want to do architecture, you have to be extremely passionate about design. Architecture as a profession. Essentially, it's one of the jobs that you have to love to be successful, like extremely successful at. It's not going to be one of those jobs where like you cruise and you can just work up the ladder by like working hard. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to love it. And I'll like do some misconceptions about architecture. Fuck, this guy's looking at me. You are not the one to make sure that the building stands. That is not your job. That is the job of a structural engineer. So people think it's like, oh, if you mess up, like people are gonna die. No, you work as almost a pair with either a team or another structural engineer. You submit your designs to that structural engineer. You're like a partnership. You submit your designs to that structural engineer. He sends it back to you and is like, we can't physically build this within the budget. And so you work together, right, with the limited resources that you have, trying to make something cool that fits within building codes that change depending on where you are. And there's a lot of factors, like the client, whoever wants to build it, like maybe wants to save money, you know, so there's a lot of limiting factors that you do the best you can with what you have. It's the best you can with what you have kind of job, unless the person's like a quadrillionaire and you can build anything your heart desires. But normally architecture is not about building anything your heart desires, because there's actual, you know, because when you get to school, right, it's like, oh, let's see what awesome shit we can like design. But in the real world, right, that shit costs money. You know what I'm saying? Like, shit is not free. So like, everyone has these great ideas, right, until you get hit with the bill, right? And it's millions and millions and millions of dollars that you don't have, and it's like, all right, let's just make it basic. And like, people are always wondering, it's like, why are all the buildings basic? Because whoever building them sees the bill for something really cool and usually doesn't have the money, which is understandable considering it's millions and millions of dollars and a ton of upkeep and a bunch of people have to get employed to make the really cool shit. So it's honestly just practical drawbacks, as well as the state. A lot of people don't know this, but if you go to another country like China or something like that, they have much more interesting looking buildings. And that's not because they are like better than us at building. That's not the case at all. It's because the United States has one of the most strict building codes and regulations, like when it comes to buildings. And then that changes based on your state and then your county. And there's so many strict regulations that you have to work within that it becomes harder and harder and harder to build really cool shit, not including the money aspect. Now, before I get into school itself, I'll tell you a little bit about the profession in case you're thinking about it. Besides all those other things, essentially architecture is the second longest job to get your license out of college, right behind being a doctor. And I think it's the second, but I might not be exactly correct on that, but it's extremely long. There's about 6 exams that you have to take, and each exam, essentially, you unlock it, I guess, the ability to not only by passing the previous one, but having a certain amount of working hours. So it's kind of like in a video game. It's like if you have a certain amount of playtime, you now have the opportunity to unlock this new cool thing. Let's say hypothetically, the first exam you need 1,000 working hours. The second exam you need 1,500. Third one. So not only do you have to pass it, but you also have to but you also have to be working. You have to have these registered working hours as a non-licensed architect, which means that you can essentially do like residential, but you're technically not allowed to. You don't have a stamp on anything that's commercial because you need a license for that. Or to start a firm, you usually need a license. And someone correct me if I'm wrong, because I did take a semester off, and you know, I am not in the working world. I'm still in school, but this is just the best of my understanding. So yeah, so there is a lot of license, and it changes from state to state as well. That's the other thing. From my understanding, at least on where I am, when you do pass these exams and you get your license, that only applies to the state that you're in. So if you want to move, so you're kind of like landlocked a bit. From my understanding, that might change or might have changed. I'm not really sure. But I know that if you do move states, it's easier to get your license than the first time, but there is another like hurdle that you have to jump. And it's just, the biggest thing is it's a lot of money and time, because there is like, I guess whoever it is that runs these exams, like whatever board, you have to pay this like yearly subscription or something, or this yearly fee to still be in the running to take these exams. So I think it's like, and I'm throwing numbers out, do not quote me on this, at least at the time that I looked, which might have been a couple of years ago, I think it's only like 35% of people that graduate with an architectural degree actually go on to get their license, because a lot of them just end up doing residential, which is just like basic houses, rather than doing like skyscrapers. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about the working world because I haven't worked in an architecture firm. I had an internship, but I haven't really experienced working in a firm. So, I mean, I can't really speak on that, but from my understanding, it's going to take a long time before you actually are the one that calls the shots on designs. You know, it's like you kind of got to work your way up. So when you go in there, someone else, or like the board or like the owner of the firm, kind of like chooses the designs, and everyone just works on a part of it. So for a while, maybe you'll be like working, maybe your job is to do staircases and bathrooms. You know, like you design the staircase, bathroom, make sure everything works, make sure all the measurements are correct, you know, make sure to pick the material or whatever, if you can do that. So that's kind of like the job. And you don't make a lot of money doing that before you get your license. Like you'll probably like, I mean, it's not bad. You'll make maybe like $65K a year, but which isn't bad. It's a good wage. But for the amount of school, you know, with the loans and everything, it's not the best trade-off. Now, I will say the positives, that if you love it, it's a great job, because you'll work your way up, and eventually you will be able to get to design things if you work really hard, start your own firm, win some competitions. Then yeah, you'll be able to design to your heart's content as long as you find clients with enough money. And there's a lot of other things you have to take into account, you know, like, you know, making sure that there's space for, you know, HVAC stuff, having enough greenery on the property, because I know a lot of counties have like a lot of, like there's an amount of green that you need to have on a property, making sure the materials are like eco-friendly, if that's kind of like a concern, making sure it looks good while staying practical cost-wise. That's another big one. It's a lot of problem solving and working within your, you know, boundaries. I do enjoy architecture, right? But from my understanding, I don't love architecture with my whole heart. And from a lot of my professors, they've given up everything they ever have because they love architecture. They live, breathe, and die architecture, okay? And that's kind of what it takes to be successful in the profession. You gotta live it, you gotta breathe it, you gotta die by it. It's just one of those kinds of things. And I realized maybe halfway through learning a bit more about the profession, because like the reason I chose architecture was because I like to draw. I didn't know what the fuck I wanted to do going into college. And I was like, damn, I don't want to go to art school. That's how you become homeless as fuck. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna go to architecture school. I don't know too much about it. So the first year is a lot of just like, at least at my school, it's just a lot of fun, like design, just kind of opening up your creativity, getting those like original courses knocked out of the way, learning the programs, building models, understanding like what a plan drawing is, a section drawing. They're not really telling you about the profession. It's kind of just laying down the foundation. You get to do the fun stuff. You know, you don't have to worry about HVAC. You don't have to worry about like zoning issues. You don't have to worry about like the costs of moving a shit ton of land. You don't have to worry about the structural aspect. Because when I say that it's not your job to make sure it's structurally sound, you still should know it. You know what I'm saying? You should have a good understanding of like, so that when you submit the designs, you're not just submitting some bullshit that's like, it's just fantasy. It's not going to stand. But in the first year, at least, we didn't have to do a lot of that material-based stuff. Like a lot of more technical stuff, it was more about just understanding kind of the whole. And it was fun, you know, and you're just knocking out your stuff, and it's your first year of college, and you're doing other fun shit. Now, by second year, it gets a little bit more, but it's still relatively basic. Now you're pretty familiar with the programs, the plan, 3D modeling, Revit, CAD, you know what I'm saying, Illustrator, Photoshop, presenting, entering competitions, still doing more of your side classes, you know. And by third year, right, now you kind of learn about the profession a bit more. The one thing I didn't like is how shady I felt. It wasn't very clear of what the actual, like the difference between school and architecture actually was, because it's very different. Like the things you do in architecture school, a lot of people that I've talked to say architecture school is the most fun part about being an architect. And I was never really no one really ever explained that to me, that it's really not what like, yes, you're learning the skills you need, but the things you do in school are not necessarily, because like in school you get to design your own buildings, you know, you get to do a lot of stuff, and you get in the workforce, right, and you're like designing staircases for the next 3 years, you know what I'm saying, or like helping somebody do something. And that's if you get your license, you know what I'm saying, and you want to do that. So, you know, looking back, I wish, I do think architecture is a phenomenal profession. I think it's awesome. I think it's great. I'm gonna finish my degree, right? But I doubt I'm gonna use it, because I know that I am not willing to dedicate my life to architecture. It's not who I am, you know, because I just don't love it enough. And the working hours are extremely, extremely long. I don't know. I know someone recently told me that there was a regulation put on architects, because like it's not really about like 9 to 5, like, oh, like you go home at this hour. No, it's more like the firm has a deadline and you work all night until it's done. So if you're not on track, like you're just there all night. So I remember someone was telling me that there was like a couple firms that were maybe understaffed, and people were working like 14-hour days for like weeks on end. And I don't know how you have a family. I don't know how you do anything else in life, you know? So I mean, if I loved it, if I lived it, breathed it, died by it, then yeah, that'd be great. Fuck it. But that's just not who I am. And I think other people, like, maybe I have like a cynical outlook on it, but I do think it's a great profession. I think school is a lot of fun. But it's not me. Now, I think you should watch other videos and stuff. I don't think you should just take my opinion for it, because obviously, like, I'm a fitness guy, I like going out, and, you know, in my experience at least, a lot of the people in my major were not really like that. They're much more introverted, much more dedicated to that. They didn't really like to go out that much. Some of them did, and I'm generalizing. Yeah, I think you should watch people that are, if you're thinking about doing architecture, don't just take my perspective, because I'm just fucking, you know, I don't know, I'm a frat dude trying to do like an artsy thing, so it's like, you know, but I think you should look into some other people's kind of perspectives on it. Don't take one person's opinion. That's just kind of my experience. But I did really enjoy school, and I do think architecture is a phenomenal profession. But I do, at the end of the day, if you take anything, you have to truly love it. And not care about money, not care about time. And if you love it that much, then I think it's the best choice for you. But you do have to, it's one of the jobs you have to absolutely love. So yeah, anyway, that's kind of my experience on architecture. I hope you guys are having a phenomenal day. I'll see you in the next one. Code Horsemeet on YOUNGLA and CRUE. Peace.